Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. All right, well, now it's time for us to get away from the topics that I know are rubbing you a little bit raw this morning. And honestly, I probably shouldn't start the show with those kinds of topics anyway. Bias confirmation is a powerful thing. I should probably just go with the current when I first start the show instead of going against it so hard, right? But I like to get people to think for themselves. That's what the Wake Up America Show is all about. But some people who don't believe in that concept, some people who love to tell you everything that you want to hear while slightly nudging you down the path of totalitarian communism, is Hollywood. Oh yes, we all know Hollywood, it's a psyop. That's why I don't watch a lot of these superhero movies of the day, because honestly, I'm tired of getting preached to. If I want to get preached to, I could go to church on Sunday and not have to pay a single dime. Joining us now to talk about the psyops of Hollywood is Samuel Mangold-Lenett. He's joining us right now. He's a writer at The Federalist. Good morning, Samuel. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Morning. Thanks for having me. How are you
Thanks.
doing?
Doing just fine. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you here for your first time, Samuel. So, what's your premise about Marvel movies?
Yeah. So, like you just said, it's pretty much just a giant psyop. Marvel is now owned by Disney. If I recall correctly, they were bought in 2011, 2010. And Disney's the largest media conglomerate in world history. And, as we saw really recently, they have a pretty explicit ideological agenda, and they're ramming that down everyone's throat pretty aggressively. It started pretty subtly, and now they're just ham-fisted ramming it down everyone's throat with everything they do. It's pretty hard to escape at this point. And granted, you don't have to go see any of the entertainment, but they own basically everything, so you can't really escape it.
Can you walk us through some examples?
Yeah. So, in a piece I recently wrote for the Federalist, pertaining to the Marvel Cinematic Universe's recent release, Ant-Man, the Quantumania. It's meant to set off the latest phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Um, First and foremost, it's just a very bad movie. But they it features very heavily themes of ideological revolution. Um, there's this band of ragtag startups in what is referred to as the quantum realm, which is like a little pocket universe, if you will, with a universe within a sub universe within our reality. Um, it's kind of hard to explain because it doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. But there's this little group of people within our reality, and within that demographic, there's this group of basically uh, communist radicals who are trying to overthrow an authoritarian leader. Um, and the whole point is, sure, the leader in the movie that they're trying to overthrow is the antagonist of the film, but the theme isn't necessarily, um, why is this person, an evil dictator? It's just overthrow the authority, overthrow all structure, get rid of institutionalized infrastructure, get rid of everything that gives our society form, solely because it is structure. Structure is bad, so get rid of it. Don't question it, just destroy it.
Okay, if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Petersen. I'm speaking to Samuel Mangold-Lenett. He's a writer at The Federalist, and he wrote a piece recently talking about Marvel movies and their themes of revolution being used to radicalize viewers. Now, I'm a child of the Ron Paul revolution, Samuel. I got my start in politics back in 2008. It was quite common for a lot of us, right-wing libertarian Republicans to sing, Ron Paul revolution, bring us back our Constitution, right? So, I mean, revolution isn't a theme that's necessarily confined to the left. I mean, there's a lot of even conservatives. I mean, every year on the 4th of July, we all praise and love those radicals who revolted and overthrew, a dictator. So, I mean, why is revolution itself some left wing concept?
Well, I mean, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with a properly ordered revolution, right? So no serious person. Of course, if you're uh, the woman, I forget her, Nicole Hannah Jones. If you're her, you're gonna have an issue with the American Revolution because you're a dishonest person. But no serious person is going to have a legitimate issue with something like the American Revolution, or resisting the tide of Nazi authority in World War II. There are such things as legitimate moral revolutions that are properly ordered. The issue at hand is that the, things like Disney are trying to create a perpetual revolution in which everything that isn't ordered along to emphasize their ideological priors has to be usurped and done away with entirely. So if something isn't along the lines of, secular humanism or whatever ideological thing Disney's trying to indoctrinate children with, whatever LGBT thing they're trying to push to children, that has to be revolted against. It could be something as, harmless as just churches existing. They're going to try and get people to revolt against that very notion.
Hmm. Well, I'm a bit of a secular humanist myself, while still acknowledging that the church can do a lot of good in society, certainly much more so than government. Being a libertarian Republican, perhaps that makes me stick out like a sore thumb. But I guess I'd like you to kind of expand on this concept of, maybe I'm pushing back a little bit on this idea of an ordered revolution. I mean, how the hell do you have an ordered revolution? I would think that a revolution would be chaotic at its very, by definition.
Yeah. So I mean, every ideological movement has, its ethos, has what it's founded upon, what it's predicated upon. Um, that being the ordering motivation, the ordering factor. So the American Revolution being ordered upon, the ideological factors enshrined in the Constitution and the Declaration. Um, the uh, the Disney Revolution, if you will, just being founded upon cynical ideological, I'm prone to say fascistic tendencies to maximize their capital. Um, it's not so much that revolution has to be chaotic, because I mean we're seeing across the board with these Fortune 500 companies waging ideological warfare. It's very systematic, it's very organized, it's very calculated. Um, in places like in the French Revolution, it tended to be chaotic at times because it proliferated amongst the masses, and that tends to be chaotic just by the very nature of it.
I
Um,
see.
you know,
My concern has always been, though, Samuel, is that conservatism, in terms of critiquing Hollywood and critiquing art and culture, conservatism really only exists to critique art and culture created mainly by the left. Don't we need our own corporations creating media, creating works of art, creating some kind of a structured idea of liberty, our own propaganda, if you will, that presents an idea of an ordered liberty in order to counteract the left? Or otherwise, all we are going to be doing is reacting with triggered aplomb at Sam Smith dancing in a devil costume at the Grammys. I mean, if conservatism simply exists to critique the left's art, I mean, essentially it will continue to lose and remain about progressivism deriving the speed limit, as Michael Malice might say. I mean, in what sense is conservatism actually constructing any kind of an ordered artistic response to this, other than just to simply a critique or to call something things like a psyop?
um, honestly, I think we're at a point where very little conservative art is being created, and I think it's been that way for entirely too long. Um, like you said, it's people just like to complain, especially with the Sam Smith thing. I'm of the mentality, granted, I was born in the late '90s, but ever since I can remember, the performative Satanism thing has just been a gimmick. It's just been meant to rile people up and get people to clutch their pearls because they know it's going to offend people and they know it's going to get a reaction. Um, an issue with the political right and cultural right too is that nobody wants to really invest in culture. Nobody wants to invest in art. And to be fair, people on the right tend to be more, entrepreneurial minded. They want to see return on investment quickly, because they want to keep growing capital. They want to keep people employed. They want to keep. That's how they see themselves benefiting society, which is a fair thing to want. Art and culture tend to have a more slow burn effect. Um, so
And
I
that makes
certainly.
perfect sense. And that's been my primary, criticism here is that the right in the situation is not investing in art. And I wonder if there really isn't something here that's in the psychology. I mean, the right engages in the culture wars, but it does it in mediums that really only speaks to an echo chamber, versus the left that produces art and culture that speaks to mass audiences. I mean, the left isn't watching Veggie Tales, okay? The left isn't, the left isn't watching, you know, or listening to conservative talk radio. The left is not, watching Fox News, right? So we on the right are existing in our media and art and culture again in an echo chamber, whereas the entire world is going to go watch Ant-Man, right? So I mean,
Right.
how do we sort of, cross those boundaries and get into a situation where on one hand, we criticize that the left is always constantly pushing their values through media, but the reality is that the only way to fight fire is with fire. How do we deal with this?
But like you said, fire with fire. I think there's a two-prong approach. Um, I think first and foremost, a big part of it has to be conserving what already exists, because we see an active effort to actively destroy beautiful art that already exists. Whether it's throwing soup at beautiful paintings or tearing down statues, that needs to be full-throated resisted by both culture, by both the masses and the government, because that is destroying public works of greatness. Um, and then there needs to be a reclamation and a re-understanding of what it means, of what beauty means in the public space, what beauty actually is, what beauty is supposed to do in the public arena. Um, and only once we re-understand what that is, then will the masses and I think the cultural and political right be able to reorient themselves towards producing that in en masse. It's not as simple as just going into the DALL-E OpenAI prompt and typing in make a beautiful picture of God. It's because personally I don't think of that as art. I think of that as the Antichrist, quite frankly. But I, I think we have to rediscover what the purpose of art is as a society and rediscover its utility. And then we can move forward into creating art once again.
See, my concern is that the issue is, whenever something new emerges, whether it's technologically or artistically, the right is prone to demonize it, right? That's satanic, right? Artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
perfect, right? Example, right? Any kind of new technology. So therefore, the right is always constantly reacting rather than sort of getting ahead of trends or even trend setting, right? But that's sort of a feature of conservatism, because what you're saying here is that we sort of have to preserve what already exists. But conservatism, preserving what we have now, is just progressivism from 20 years ago, right? So I mean, if we're really going to talk about something, I mean, in some essence, we need a revolution, Samuel, right? If the left is provoking a revolution of sorts, perhaps it might be it might be a good idea for us to take those themes and to expound on them, but for our own purposes. I mean, what was one of the most popular libertarian epics of the last like 20, 30 years, right? V for Vendetta, right? Inspired generations of people for a revolutionary cause, admittedly on the basis of anti-Catholicism, perhaps. But I mean, still, a lot of Ron Paulers took that imagery, took the mask, right, and appropriated that for our cause. Why can't conservatives do the same thing? And my argument would be, before you answer, is probably because, whenever anything like that emerges, it's demonic.
Yeah, and to be fair, the whole Antichrist with the AI thing was a bit of a throwaway line. Um, my concern with things like AI is largely the fact that we're seeing that it does have the capacity to replace human function very effectively. Um, and before it really proliferates in society, I think there needs to be guide rails put around it. And I think that's
Are you using it?
I don't know. No, because it's very new technology still.
I'm going to make a
But we're
prediction here. I'm going to make a prediction here, Samuel.
mm,
And this might be a little blunt, but I'll tell you, if you aren't using it right now, a year from now, everyone in your peer group will have outpaced you by like 10 yards easily. I've taken advantage of AI. I'm using it right now, and it's maximized my productivity far beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, I think I had 20,000 YouTube views a month before I started using it. Now it's 6.7 million YouTube views a month. And, Satan wasn't involved. It was just Bill Gates, baby. Some people think he's one of the same.
potato potato.
Samuel, I'll give you a last word on this one before I let you go, brother. What would you like to share with our audience?
Um, yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I would posit that in order to really discover, um, like you said, there is utility in um, revolution, but I would posit that a properly ordered revolution is one that rediscovers eternal truths, like the American Revolution did. It's one that goes back to really digs back into our classical understanding of what it means to be human, probes the depths of what it means to be eternal, what is beauty. It asks questions that are actually worth asking and doesn't just go upon the whims of the current era and the current moment. Um, and I would also say you don't need to go see Ant Man. It's a crappy movie.
I think I'll go ahead and avoid that one. Samuel, I appreciate your time today on the program. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll definitely want to check out your writings over there. Do you have a social media you'd like to plug real briefly, Samuel?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Mangold, Mangold_Lenett, Lennett.
All right, Samuel, thank you very much for your time today. We certainly appreciate you very much. We hope to have you back on again. Samuel Mangold-Lenett over at the Federalist. Have a good one.
Thanks. You as well.
Thank you very much.